Time for Business. Brian Quinn joins us. Good evening to you, sir. Fantastic to see you. Starting with a major development for America's opioid epidemic, a story we've covered extensively here at France 24. The maker of OxyContin, that dreaded drug, has reached a plea deal with federal prosecutors. Tell us more.
That's right, Mark. Purdue Pharma is pleading guilty to criminal charges over the promotion and distribution of OxyContin. The highly addictive painkiller has played a huge role in America's devastating opioid crisis. The company hit with $8 billion in penalties, though most of those won't be paid, not to the government at least. Purdue will pay just $225 million out of a $2 billion criminal forfeiture as it undergoes a bankruptcy restructuring that will distribute the rest to U.S. communities currently suing the company. Criminal and civil fines totaling around $6.3 billion will also have to compete with creditors and plaintiffs. Now, the billionaire Sackler family that owns Purdue is set to pay just $225 million in a separate civil penalty with no criminal charges filed against them yet. A separate criminal investigation into individuals remains ongoing. Some state prosecutors have complained that the deal lets the company off a bit too easily, especially after some 470,000 American deaths from opioid abuse over 2 decades. Prosecutors, though, sought to focus on putting the firm's assets to use in undoing the damage that it's caused. Take a listen.
The agreed resolution, if approved by the court, will require that the company be dissolved and no longer exist in its present form. It would require that the Sacklers must relinquish all ownership and control of the company or of any of its successors, and the company's assets would be transferred to a new public benefit company, or PBC, owned by a trust for the benefit of the American public.
Next, European agriculture ministers have reached a long-awaited deal on the EU's next common agricultural policy. The 6-year plan, is the bloc's largest budget item. The new deal assigns a significant chunk of funding for environmental protection and fighting climate change, though activists say that doesn't go far enough. Selena Sykes reports.
It's taken nearly 2 years, but the European Union is finally on the cusp of overhauling its agricultural policy. Agreed by the bloc's 27 agricultural ministers, the new policy aims to become more aligned with the EU's climate change commitments, while supporting farmers' livelihoods.
Und wir werden die belohnen, die mehr für die Umwelt machen, für das Klima machen, aber dennoch dafür sorgen, dass wir jeden Tag Nahrungsmittel auf den Tisch bekommen. Und deshalb ist es so wichtig, dass weiterhin auch die Einkommenssicherung gewährleistet ist.
With a set budget of around €387 billion over 7 years, the Common Agricultural Policy accounts for the biggest share of EU spending. Under the agreement, farmers will have to respect stricter environmental regulations if they want to receive financial aid. Ministers agreed that 20% of payments to farmers will be earmarked for green schemes, such as organic farming and agroforestry. Farmers will not be able to access this money for other purposes. Some Eastern European countries voiced concern about tying funds to environmental aims, warning that the money would be left unspent. Meanwhile, the Greens in the European Parliament said more than 2/3 of subsidies would still be paid without sufficient environmental protection conditions. Environmental campaigner Greta Thunberg also strongly criticised the agreement, saying it meant surrender on climate and environment. The green policy will now go to a vote in European Parliament. It is set to start from 2023.
Time now for a check on the day's trading action. Wall Street sinking at the close on Wednesday as investors continue to wait for developments on a new economic stimulus package in the U.S. Dow, the S&P, and the Nasdaq all finishing in the red around 1/4 to 1/3%. European indexes closing deep in negative territory as investors on the continent appear pessimistic about that U.S. stimulus deal. London's FTSE 100 closed down nearly 2%. CAC 40 here in Paris down 1.5%, with the Frankfurt DAX not far behind it at the close. And finally, for business, time to stock up on some mom jeans. The Gap is considering the closure of a significant number of its European locations by next summer. The iconic casual clothing chain has some 130 stores across the continent. A restructuring plan in the works would see outlets in the UK, France, Ireland, and Italy shut down for good. Union sources say French employees have already been informed that all 22 locations in the country are slated for closure. That's 500 jobs here. Gap is facing not only an industry-wide drop in sales due to the coronavirus, but also mounting competition from fast fashion rivals like Zara and H&M. And I kid a little bit there at the top, but obviously no laughing matter with those jobs. And I, in fact, will miss it. I had a fair collection of Gap clothing myself
Everyone's
back in high
had Gap
school.
stuff. It's very easy
Yeah,
to get. It's
yeah.
usually well priced. It lasts a long time. You know, it's that kind of thing. But as you say, 500 jobs going just in France.
Yeah, not
It's a
good.
real sign of the times, isn't it? Let's hope that that can somehow be turned around and maybe they'll come back on it. But it sounds like it's over. Yeah.
For the moment, at
Yeah.
least. We'll see.
Brian, thank you very much indeed. Brian Quinn with The Business. Great to see you.
You too.